Good morning, and welcome to Christ Church of the Valley here in Montrose as we continue this series. Steve started this series last week for us, the message to the seven churches, and here we continue the series and we move on to the next church here in Revelation chapter 2. But before we get into the text this morning, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think of a time that you went through a struggle, a trial, you had an issue, whatever it may be, and it was a process. It couldn't be something that happened overnight. You know, we've all had those nights, right, when we're worried about something. But this took a while, and it ate you for a while, and it was hard, and you dealt with it. And I want you to think of a trial where you had somebody. And I need you to think of one where somebody is actually there. You don't get to say, God got me through this one. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying you've got to think of a time when at the beginning of the trial, you had somebody with you. Through the trial, they were there with you. And at the end of the trial, they were also there with you. Do you have one? When Christy and I interviewed to go out to the Oregon church and to be the youth pastor out at the Oregon church, they had told us that in 2008, when the economy tanked, they had to let the former youth minister go. And since that time, there hadn't been an official youth group. And so what we would be tasked with doing was launching from the ground up a youth ministry. And we thought, yeah, this will be great. We came and figured out that some saints can be described as stubborn and less than helpful when you're trying to get a ministry off the ground. And some saints are great and they're there with you the whole time, you know. One particular family, they were a terrific family. They came to the church almost every Sunday. We would see them out in the foyer. We can speak Canadian this morning. We would see them every time. We would greet them. They were always happy to be there. They had 2 or 3 kids. I can't tell you one of the kids' names. I don't remember any of the kids' names because they never came to a single youth group, a single youth event, Camp Attitude, Mission for Mexico. I saw them on Sunday morning, and if you rewind the clock to then, I could probably tell you their name. I did learn it at that point. But today it's kind of gone out of my head. Anyways, this particular family, one Sunday, they tell us that this child is involved in this ministry, and it's going to be on this night. And if you could bring the youth group to it, that would be wonderful. And in a less than gracious way, I kind of stood there going, you know, one hand washes the other. You know, if you were helping me, maybe I'd be more inclined to help you. But I'm just not feeling it this morning. The day passes and so forth. And anyway, sometime later, Christy and I are chatting. And Christy was worried that she might come across as the bad guy in this story. She's not the bad guy. She's the voice of reason. And we all know that sometimes the voice of reason is a bit poignant. It's a bit, reasonable. So Christy's not the bad guy. Christy is the voice of reason in this story. So anyways, we're talking about what we're going to be doing in the next coming month and what we need to be planning for and stuff like that. And she reminds me that's the Sunday, or that's the day that that thing's going on and we should take the kids to it. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to. Because I don't feel I'm getting much support from them. I don't feel like supporting them very much. And I just feel like right now everybody's against me. And Christy said, I'm sorry? Have I not been here since day one? Have I not been with you on the highs and on the lows? Have I not been through everything with you? The time that 1 kid shows up for youth group and the time that 6 kids and 10 kids show up for youth group? Am I not there every time? And I went, you know what? You're right. She was there with me at the beginning of that. She was there with me through that. And she's there till the end. And she's obviously still with me here today. And I thank God for that, right? Now, the reason I want you to be thinking about an event like that, a struggle like that, where somebody has been with you throughout the whole trial, is because the way this letter, this is the second church here in the book of Revelation, the way this letter starts. Verse 8, "And to the angel of the church of Smyrna, write, the first and the last, who was dead and has come to life, says this." Do you see what he just did? The first and the last. The first time we ever see that phrase is in the book of Isaiah, and God, speaking to Isaiah, uses that title of himself. Here, the resurrected Jesus, speaking to the Apostle John, takes that title and puts it on himself. So a little bit of a hint there to the Trinitarian concept of God and the Father and Jesus and so forth. But what's specifically interesting about what's about to happen in this letter is Jesus is not about to deliver good news to the church as far as everything's going to go good for you and everything's going to be well and it's going to be caviar and roses. I don't know what caviar has to do with roses, but that's how it's going. That's not Jesus' message to the church. And he wants to start the message to the church by telling them, I am the beginning and I am the end. So I was there when it started and I'm there when it ends. So what does that mean? That means I'm with you through the whole thing. And that's a very important thing for the church of Smyrna to capture. That's a very important thing for Christians today to capture. He goes on to say, who was dead and has come back to life. Now that's another important thing for us to know as we go into this, because death is the great defeater of man. Death is the common departure for everybody. And in fact, that's going to be something that's going to come up here in this letter. And he wants to remind the church before he gets to that point that, by the way, remember that I'm the one who was dead and came back to life. I'm the one who defeated the enemy of mankind. And specifically, we need to think about his death. What was his death? His death was being defeated. The Jesus movement that had been started in Galilee and taken across all of Judea at that point ended. And it was defeated by the ruling authority and by Rome. The Jesus movement stops here because we take the Jesus, the leader, and we publicly execute him. And we defeat the movement, and it's all said and done. And Jesus reminds his audience, and he reminds us, that he overturned the verdict. He overturned the verdict of the Sanhedrin. He overturned the verdict of Rome. And he overturned their defeat of him and said, I have victory. And that's going to be a very important idea as we continue into this. Verse 9, I know your tribulation and your poverty. The word here for poverty is not the usual Greek word for poor. It's the Greek word for desolate. It's the Greek word for not a penny to your name. Not only are you poor, but you are at the brink of financial and life disaster. And yet here we see this interesting concept. You're poor, you're poverty, but you are rich. This fits the theme of this kind of literature. This kind of literature is called apocalypse. It's a revealing. And what it does is it often takes what you can see, the world as you can see it here in the real world, and it tells you that it's real. It never tells you that the world as you see it isn't real. It tells you that what you're about to experience is real, but there's something that you can't see. There's something beyond, and I'm going to pull back the curtain and I'm going to show you what you can't see, and what you can't see is going to influence how you live your life. And the blasphemy by those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. I want to take a moment here, and I want to hit the pause button, and I want to offer a little bit of personal thought and tact when it comes to this. The person speaking in this passage is the resurrected and glorified Jesus. Now, in the incarnation, we see in the Gospels when the incarnate Christ interacted with somebody, we often hear that he knew their thoughts. We also are told that he could see into their hearts. We also know from Paul that in the incarnation, he emptied himself and took on the form of a man, humbling himself. So, however the incarnation worked, we know that God limited himself in certain respects to his deity, in certain respects to his godhood. But here we're dealing with the glorified and resurrected Christ. There is no deficiency in the person speaking here. And this person gets to say of this group, they are a synagogue of Satan. May I suggest that we use a little bit of tact when we speak to somebody, regardless of if we feel that their religion or their political or their whatever is influenced by Satan. We can believe that and we can see that, but maybe that's not the best way to start a conversation. I'm just saying. Now, interesting what is going on in this passage. There's a lot of theories, and we could literally be here until 9 o'clock tonight, and I don't even have to get off this verse. We could stay here and just unpack this, but we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is take the common denominators and figure out what is going on here. How many of you remember the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Like that movie? The beginning of that movie, you have the Sundance Kid sitting in the tavern, and he's been playing cards, and Butch Cassidy comes in. And the person that the Sundance Kid has been playing cards with accuses him of cheating, not knowing that he's the Sundance Kid. And Butch Cassidy wants to get out of the situation, doesn't want the situation to boil over, but this accusatory person is trying to make a point. And the Sundance Kid offers him a way out. All you have to do is invite us to stay. And so when Butch Cassidy tells the guy, I love this scene, do you want to invite us to stay? You don't have to mean it. You just have to say it. I'm not going to ruin the rest of that scene for you. It's a good scene. But here in Smyrna is one of the oldest imperial cults in the Roman world. The imperial cult is the temple dedicated to Caesar. Now, we have several Caesars in history. Some of them actually probably believed that they were truly God. Caligula and Nero come to mind. Some of the other ones, they probably just went with the pomp and circumstance of it. They knew that they weren't God. Interestingly, about the imperial cult, oftentimes, all they wanted you to do was go to the temple of the emperor and just say that Caesar is Lord. You don't have to mean it. I just need you to say it. Interestingly, in 63 BC, when General Pompey captures the Temple Mount, and that's it. Judea is under Roman control. It's a done deal. From that point on, Judaism either experiences legality or it experiences toleration. And there's a debate among scholars which it is. Whichever the case may be, the Jews got a pass when it came to the imperial cult. They didn't get a happy pass. The Romans didn't stand there going, oh, good for you, you got out of our system. It was more of a fine, whatever. So here, in this community of Smyrna, there's a Jewish population. And here, the resurrected Christ is speaking to the church. We see in the Gospel of John already certain congregations, certain synagogues finding out if you believe in Jesus, you're out of the synagogue. We see that when he heals the blind man, and the blind man goes before the Sanhedrin, and they even call in his parents, and they ask his parents, what happened? What's going on here? They say, he's old enough, let him make his own decisions. They're saying, we don't want to be put out of the synagogue. Because when you get put out of the synagogue, you lose the protections that come with Judaism. And it seems here that there's a group of Jews who have realized that the church believes in Jesus, and it seems that they've been put out of the synagogue. And this group that Jesus is speaking to is now facing a dilemma. You lost your protections by being put out of the synagogue, so now you either have to go to the imperial temple and say that Caesar is Lord, or you have to maintain your beliefs that Jesus is Lord. And if you don't participate in the imperial cult, you're going to face tribulation. Gentlemen, ladies, do we face that same dilemma today? Do we see this in our world today? You will go with our system, and you will say that Caesar is Lord, whoever Caesar is in our world. And we can choose to go with the system and minimize any consequences, any pushback, anything we face, or we can maintain our testimony that Jesus is Lord. And if Jesus is Lord, then Caesar can't be Lord, right? That makes sense. That seems to be what is going on here in Smyrna. And verse 10 begins, "Do not fear." And at that point, I have to take a little break from the message, and I have to get up on my soapbox, and I have to share my heart with you. And that is, sometime within the last 10 years, somebody who, if I'm to be gracious, is a little joker, got it in his head, got it in her head to put out this meme on the internet. A meme is those little boxes. They sometimes have pictures. They have a word. They tell you a message. Somebody thought it would be funny to put out a meme that says 365 times the Bible says do not fear. So that means every day of the year you can not fear. Isn't that a great message? Do you know why I don't like that message? Because it's not true. The Bible never says it 365 times, just that phrase, do not fear. You don't quite get to 100. If you play with the wording and say fear not, you can get up into the 200s, but oftentimes those are very case specific. Mary, do not fear. Joseph, do not fear. Abraham, do not fear. So the bottom line is the Bible never says it 365 times. It does say it, and if it says it, that's good enough, right? So don't share that meme, and if you see somebody share that meme, use your discretion how to proceed. And now we return to the message here. Verse 10, "Do not fear what you're about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison so that you will be tested. And you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." So here we're being given the bad news. Here we're being given why Jesus has to talk to the church of Smyrna. And he's saying, don't fear what you're about to suffer. The devil is about to throw some of you into prison to test you. He wants the people to know that the force, the person, the power behind the tribulation is the devil. And he wants you to know that the purpose for it is testing, which is a very interesting word for this person to use. Who's the person speaking? Jesus. Does anybody happen to remember an event here in the pages of Scripture where somebody was tempted of the devil and overcame his temptations? The same speaker is the one who did that, huh? So the same speaker is the one who started this with, "I know your tribulations." Interesting connection there, right? Because it's not some willy-nilly, yeah, I know what you're going through. He's saying, what you've been through, I've been there. Do not fear. This is going to happen. You're going to be put in prison for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. Prison is not what we think of as prison in the sense that you might be sentenced for 40, 50, 60 years, and you're going to go and you're going to sit in there and watch cable TV and eat 3 hot meals a day and stuff like that. That is not the prison that they're talking about. The prison that they're talking about is probably a local prison, and it's probably just a place to hold you until we can get the sentence stamped and get it carried out. That's really what's going on here. And he's bringing up the fact that this may lead you to your death. Choosing to not participate, staying out of the imperial cult, and maintaining that Jesus is Lord may lead to your death. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. I love this crown of life. It's a very beautiful picture. James chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. I don't know if anybody here will actually face life or death for the gospel. I know that we will face comfortable versus uncomfortable. I know that we will face things like that. And so I'm just seeing here once again Jesus saying, if you remain faithful, don't look at it the way the world sees it. Don't look at it in those terms. Look at it from my perspective, and you will see that you get the better deal. One thing that's interesting to me is some of the contrasts between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Sometimes we see contrast in how God behaves, what God says in the Old Testament versus what he says and how he acts in the New Testament. But this and the concept of grace is an Old Testament concept. I want you to write this down, Psalm 73. And I want you to read Psalm 73 later. Now, what happened here? Well, I wrote the message and I continued in my daily Bible reading. In my daily Bible reading, I got to Psalm 73 and I went, I wish I had time to put that into my sermon because it is so perfect. I swear to you that Psalm 73 is the psalm that goes with this letter. Verse 11, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who is sitting there when this letter is read to the church of Smyrna, and he who listens to it then, and he who is here today and listens to what the Spirit says to that church and to the church. He who overcomes will not be hurt by the second death. The second death is identified here later in the book of Revelation. Here in the book of Revelation, it's portrayed as a lake of fire. Other scriptural references to this place is called the Valley of Gehenna. It seems to be a dump. It seems to be a wasteland. Other places, Jesus describes this place as the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Christian, can I tell you, it breaks my heart that there's such a place. It breaks my heart that there's such a place. Because such a place can only exist away from God, in the absence of God, far removed from God. Somebody was once asking me if I believe in the doctrine of hell. And I said, regrettably, I believe in the doctrine of hell. Now let me clarify what I mean there. It's not that I want to change it. It's not that I want to take it out and pretend that it's not there. Unfortunately, it's there and I have to deal with it. But why I regrettably, I told him this story. How many people here have ever had somebody giving you affections that you were not ready to reciprocate? Reciprocate. Words, right? Gals, how many guys ever chased you and you just did not like that guy? Yeah? Guys, how many gals ever chased you? And you had to have the friends conversation, right? Now, I want you to imagine that person, you've already sat down with them, you've already explained, we're friends and all we're ever going to be is friends. Now, imagine that person won't accept that. And they continue to pursue that. And our culture, we're starting to get to terms like legal and terms like lawyer and terms like stalking, right? God loves. God loves everybody. And He wants that relationship with everybody. And He sent flowers. And He sent cards. And He's made a way for us to have a restored relationship with Him, right? And He holds out His arms all day long to the entire world, to everybody, saying, be restored. Have a relationship with me. I love you. Come unto me. But some will choose not to. They will choose to not reciprocate. They will choose to not accept that love. And that's why there's this place, this outer darkness, the second death. It's there because God will not force anybody to be in His presence. He'll let you make your choice. He'll let you make your decision. Christian, this morning, have you made your decision? Have you chosen to accept His love and accept His forgiveness and accept His grace and accept that our relationship has been restored? Are you here this morning and you don't have a restored relationship? It's broken. You can have a restored relationship. Talk to me, talk to Steve, talk to Mel. It's there and it's ready and it's waiting just for you. Here in a moment, I want to invite the worship team to come out, but not yet. I want to read this to you. This comes from a book by Brendan Manning. He was a very smart theologian. I say that knowing that I disagree with him on certain points. So that should tell you something, that even though I disagree with him on certain points, I still call him a brilliant man. So that was Brendan Manning. He here cites a play, and this play was written in the 1960s by an East German pastor, and it was called The Sign of Jonah. And this is the final scene, and it's the Last Judgment. All the peoples of the earth are assembled on the plains of Jehoshaphat, waiting God's verdict. However, they are not waiting submissively. On the contrary, they have gathered in small groups, talking indignantly. One group is a band of Jews, a sect that has known little but religious, social, and political persecution throughout their history. Included in their number are victims of Nazi concentration camps. Huddled together, the group demands to know what right has God to pass judgment on them, especially a God who has dwelled eternally secure in heaven. Another group consists of American blacks. They too question the authority of God, a God who has never experienced the misfortunes of men, never known the squalor and depths of human degradation, to which they were subjected to in the suffocating holds of slave ships. Another group was comprised of those born illegitimately, the butt of every joke and sneers all of their lives. Hundreds of such groups scattered across the plains, the poor, the afflicted, the maltreated. Each group appoints a leader to represent them and stand before the throne of God and challenge His divine right to sentence their immortal destiny. They meet in council and decide this remote and distant God has never experienced human agony and is unqualified to sit in judgment unless He is willing to enter into the suffering and humiliating state of man and endure what they have undergone. Their conclusion reads thus: "You must be born a Jew. The circumstances of your birth must be questioned. You must be misunderstood by everyone, insulted and mocked by your enemies, betrayed by your friends. You must be persecuted, beaten, and humiliated, and finally murdered in a most public fashion. Such is the judgment passed on God by the assembly. The clamor arises to a fever pitch as they await his response. Then, a brilliant and dazzling light illuminates the entire plain, and everyone who has passed judgment on God falls silent. For in blazing on high in the heavens, for the whole world to see, is the signature of Jesus Christ, with this inscription above: I have served my sentence." This first and the last, the one who knows your tribulation, has been through your tribulation, can relate to your tribulation. The church at Smyrna needed to hear that. The church today needs to hear that. Christian, you need to hear that. I don't know what you're going through, and I don't know why, in the sense that I could explain it to you. Other than God has a plan, He has a purpose. And not only that, He can relate to you because He has suffered that exact same thing. I want to invite the worship team to come up. Again, this morning, I offer the chance to know this Jesus who knows your tribulation because He's experienced your tribulation. This Jesus who is ready and waiting with arms wide open to reconcile you to God. And if that's you this morning, don't leave here this morning without talking to me. Talk to Pastor Steve, talk to Mel, talk to anybody. And Christian, whatever you're going through, take faith and have heart in that He knows your tribulation.